perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small nut, a medium, let us escape from this tedium.
Hello, welcome back to Paranormal Perspectives. My name is Kieran, and as I always say, my friends call me Stan. My friend Christine here. Hello, how are you doing?
Hi.
Are you well?
I am very well, thank you. Good to see you as well.
Always good to hear. I think you're feeling better than a demon. Feeling better than the demon that I encountered.
Absolutely.
So we're at the second part of this trauma demon episode. So initially, just a recap, really, I spoke about an experience about some horrible thing that had followed me for many years, from my childhood to my teenage years. And all started out with this accident, and I had this out-of-body experience where I encountered this entity in the hospital I was in. And and through this experience, as I healed, it kind of followed me around. It started to affect the world around me and the people around me. And in the end, it ended up in one god-awful fight between my friend, this medium who essentially saved my life, really, and released me from this thing. And so the whole purpose of this episode really is just to kind of show like these things do happen, and also get different interpretations, really. So I describe it as a trauma demon, born of great trauma, but it could be a psychological thing. It could be something else entirely from the spiritual side. So here, obviously, I'm just having a chat with my friend Christine and getting a view of that, really. And if anyone else is watching, really, it would be great to hear your stories, because it's more normal than you think. I hate to say, and I don't mean to scare everyone, really, but there are things out there that we don't fully understand that seem to want us and need us and draw from our, great pain, really. And sometimes it's about identifying that in its case, really, but also never forgetting to obviously speak to a professional and see if it is a psychological thing, really. So yeah, Christine. So what do you think of the story in part one? Do you have a theory around that?
I'll be honest with you, I never experienced anything like it myself. However, when I was a young child, I was very aware of a darkness that used to be in my bedroom watching me. And I was so young, but it was years later, and I was talking to a girl that I just happened to be working with, and she said where she lived, and she was actually living in the same house where I lived as a child, which was a massive coincidence. And I went, "Oh, did you ever see the black thing in the back bedroom?" She went, "You saw it too." I says, "Well, I remember it, and I remember being very frightened by it." When I say I was a little child, I must have been in a cot, so probably up to about 2.5, 3 years old, because it was a big cot, yeah. I've never encountered anything that you've encountered, so I don't know whether I can really give an opinion. However, I know of other people who have had a similar interaction with things, and it has come on the back of trauma. Now, your trauma came from a place of you were physically hurt and you underwent massive surgery. I mean, that's traumatizing in and of itself. Do I think it's psychological? Was it real? What was going on? I will say this. I don't think we should ignore it. There's too many people have these experiences. We can't just turn around and say, "Oh, it's in the mind." I hate that when people say, "Well, you're just imagining it." Oh, it's not. It's not imagination when you're a kid. It's real. So in that respect, I have never really had any interaction with what I would call a demon. But I remember this thing, and it was just like a large black shape that was in my bedroom, and it scared the living daylights out of me. I don't remember having gone through a trauma like you did, Kieran, or there wasn't any trauma at home. I came from a very loving home. I tend now to think that it was some sort of an entity. I wonder if it's because as children, our little minds are very open and we perceive things. And, not everything out there is good. I don't remember this thing ever hurting me, but it did frighten me. I believe that the spirit world would not allow something to hurt me as a child. I think I'm protected. I believe that the spirit world protects us. And I'm not going to take away anybody's experience by saying, that it's just imagination. The fact that somebody else came in at a later date and had a battle with it shows that, with yours, I'm talking about, suggests it was very real. And, not everything in the world is nice. It's not all spiritual and light. I have another good friend who underwent something, and I don't know whether she would call it a demon, but it was certainly very frightening for her. It's a shame she's not here tonight. She'd be able to give perhaps a more comprehensive perspective on it, but very, very interesting, and something that probably people, as they grow older, will put to the back of their mind and go, no, it was just your imagination. But I've seen many things during my life, and I think yours is very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm beginning to kind of piece it together now, because I spent many years through my childhood just assuming it was a dream. Like even that out-of-body experience, that took me until my late teens to kind of early 20s really to fully realize this is real. This is beginning to come together, because even like my first early signs of this out-of-body experience connecting with reality was the fact that, for one, like I mentioned previously, that when I was there, my physical body being wheeled around the hospital, already knowing the lefts and the rights and all the turns on my way through this hospital before I'd ever even physically been there, if that makes sense. To also, in this experience, I was transported many miles down the road into the center of the city I was living in, to a specific alleyway. And then, a year or so later down there with my friends, I was walking through. I then realized that was the spot for my dream. So there were a few instances in my early years where I began to think, this is all beginning to come together now, but this should be a dream. Maybe it's not. Things were cracking, but this particular, this whole, as I call it, the trauma demon, I had resigned to just being a psychological thing affected by, of course, as you say, the traumas of the surgery, the psychological trauma, affected by the drugs that I had to take at the time to, stem infections and help the healing and so on. But this thing kept visiting me through my time in the hospital. I'd see this little creature. It was very kind of dark, and it had, this, I feel like, is a stereotype of every horror film ever made. But it's a very dark creature with like quite a gnarly looking face, having no hair. I got to see two white eyes, like slightly glowing, not lighting up the room so much, but just enough to see, and I could see the pupils just there in the dark. And every time I looked at it, I could feel like gravity like turn. It's like a turn and a pull. I usually get that feeling, I know now as an adult, when I encounter things that are kind of beyond my understanding anyway, like beyond sort of the physical realm. And this thing kept following me after the hospital and for the years after. And it eventually began to also land in reality, where I began to realize something's not right here. And a lot of the times, the first few years, it manifested itself in simply people getting angry, which to a kid at the time, you just thought, well, maybe I'm just being an annoying kid. Maybe no one likes me. But people used to get very angry very quickly. And that was with me having very little interaction with them. Like, this is me at the age of like 7 to, I don't know, that 10 years old, I think it was at the time when it was the most intense, where teachers would get very angry very quickly. Like, I was quite a timid kid, very shy, but still very polite. I'd have teachers like banging the table. I had a teacher flip a table just because I asked him. I didn't know how to do this divide sum. No exaggeration there. Like, despite him being a bit of a grumpy teacher, I don't think that's part of his character. And at the time, I just thought, well, maybe I'm a bad kid. And I spent all those years thinking I was a bad kid. Like, people used to keep exploding at me. And yeah, it did continue into my teenage years, where it happened less often, though, but when it did, it was much bigger. And again, I wasn't thinking at the time a demon's following me about. I just thought, well, there's something about me, something that's just not right, and I don't know what to do. It's kind of getting out of control. And it then began to kind of expand into actual physical events which anybody could experience. So that would come about in objects in the room moving. I had as I mentioned in the last episode, this bowl of jelly beans explode, go all over the room, like not even talking like a little explosion, like the whole thing just exploded, went absolutely everywhere. And yeah, you got to think about, okay, well, scientific facts. Okay, well, it was a metal bowl. It was sat on the table in front of me. So for one, think about, okay, could you have kicked that? Could it be the expansion and the retraction of the metal, as the metal maybe could have been cooling from, being in the daylight, for example, and then cooling down, it then pops back into shape? That's a possibility. But this thing was like a thick metal bowl. It didn't really have much room for maneuver in terms of like flexibility of the material. I couldn't figure it out. I knew that I didn't kick it, because I think kicking a very large metal bowl that big is going to hurt. And and this thing kept growing and growing to the point where I kind of encountered this kind of thing in my room. I experienced a lot of distortion. There was this kind of vortex in the room, and eventually culminated in my friend then having a fight with it. After having this conversation with me and identifying what this thing was, it all sounded quite mad at the time. I thought, well, I didn't even know what a medium was at the time, let alone demonic entities and vortexes and such. But she had an almighty fight with this creature, and she asked me to go away and dealt with it though. But my mum was with her and told me everything that had happened. And this thing was hissing and shouting at her. It was insulting her. It was throwing boxes around the room. It was jumping from place to place, and she could actually see it. And the scary thing is, after that, eventually over time, she spoke to me about it. Like, she almost deliberately didn't tell me all about what happened, because she was able to fight this thing off. She was a very experienced medium then, by the way. I wouldn't recommend that anybody ever do that, of course, unless you're competent. But she didn't tell me at the time, so we could form a detachment from the attachment. So I could pull away from it as well as it pull away from me, because obviously it latched onto me during that traumatic period. And as time went by, I eventually spoke to her about it, though, and I asked her, okay, well, what did you do? And she explained to me the process she went through to force this thing out of the room. And then I asked her, like, okay, I haven't told you what I could see, because I could see it often. It would sometimes visit me at night, and it'd always be there in the corner of the room. She drew a picture for me, and just like I described, she drew this kind of quite a dark-looking creature, quite gnarly-looking skin, kind of no hair, but very white eyes with black pupils. And that scared me, because that was, unquestionable connection to the physical world. It was no longer a theory, or, I was having doubts here and there about whether I'm just simply translating a traumatic period in my life psychologically as, an entity, essentially moving all of my trauma and sadness and all this thing into like one particular entity. But no, this person that I hadn't described what I had seen had, for one, encountered the entity and experienced the things I had been experiencing, but also had seen it without me explaining it to her. And that's scary. I mean, like, good on her. Like, she's a real hero. Like, that is a scary thing for any person to do, regardless of your level of experience, though. But this thing was quite nasty. So yeah, I went through all these years of it affecting people around me. Like, because I had like quite an angry stepdad, and I mentioned the altercation that I had. That came from me doing nothing ultimately, me just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And it made me reflect upon my entire life. Like, all those people over these years that I thought maybe weren't very good people, maybe they were being influenced by something that was around me, or maybe they were bad people. I just don't know. But it made me question, like, I was so solid about people being a certain way. It almost kind of gave me hope, because when I was released of this connection, for one, it wasn't affecting me emotionally as much as it was before. I was feeling more positive. I wanted to be around people more. I started going out with my friends again and just having a normal life. But I then began to see people in a different way, where previously I thought they're just angry at me, the world hates me, and all this kind of stuff. That everybody seemed a bit kinder and a bit nicer, and that's kind of what started my journey into the unknown. And it's what inspired this podcast ultimately, because I then began to look upon my life. Okay, well, I was part of this religion that didn't align with all of these experiences that happened, because all of these things weren't possible according to them. At the same time, I've seen them as empirical view of the events. I can't really question like whether it happened or not. It happened, and other people had seen it. So yeah, I went on this adventure just to learn more about life and really get to know the unknown ultimately, and then realize actually the so-called paranormal is normal. Ironically, like, it's parallel to normal though, but these things are happening more than I think, because I realize it's happened to more people than I previously knew. So yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, I want to take you right back, and you were saying stuff was happening. You've heard of psychokinesis, yeah?
Yes.
That's when things can move and all the rest of it.
Yes. Yes.
And when I was listening to the first one, I thought, okay, um, right, okay, so you've had the trauma, but you're now on this path. I wonder whether you've always had a natural ability, yeah, um, to, but you were always going to come down this pathway. Um, you had the trauma of the accident. Maybe that started, or it brought about some upsurge in your ability that you weren't aware of at the time. I'll start with that. I've got a cat that is trying desperately to get out of the house.
Oh,
You're going to
look
have to
after your
edit
cat.
this.
Cat's more
Hold
important,
me a
don't worry.
minute.
But yeah, I've considered the possibility of psychokinesis. I'm not exactly, sure if I could be capable of doing that, but it did kind of culminate at a time when a lot was kind of going on, really, because I was being severely bullied at school as well. That on top of everything, I had my mum was going through a divorce with my stepdad.
Right. So you've got all of those things going on. And the P word comes up, poltergeist. Um, I am absolutely not a scientist, but I do know that we affect everything around us. So, okay, you notice that people were angry with you and all the rest of it. And I wonder how much they were unconsciously picking up this thing that was around you. I call it attachment, perhaps. And what was happening was that was bouncing back. And that's, you said about your stepfather and all the rest of it. So let's take that all into the equation. That's not to say this thing wasn't there. I believe that if we are unhappy, angry, sad, we will attract those things to us. You've got a scared little boy that's in hospital. Now, from my understanding of the spirit world, they won't allow you to come to any harm. That's when you're working on a certain level. But when you've got somebody that's frightened, or you've got somebody that's sick, right, we are not functioning the way that we should do. So perhaps what you were seeing was a spirit, but you were seeing it in a way that, or it was presenting itself to you, or you perceived it in a way that it was something that was angry. Now, it's interesting that you talk about your friend having a fight. I remember years ago, somebody said to me, my granddaughter won't sleep in her bedroom. I says, why not? She says, because she says there's a man, and the man's coming to get her. And this little girl was only maybe about 5 years old. So she says, what should I do? I says, okay. I says, you go into that room and you give it a good telling off, and you tell it to get the hell out. It has no place to be there. And I says, whether you believe it or not, I says, go through the actions. What's going to happen is the granddaughter's going to see you doing that. And that's, Granny's the brave one that's come in, and she did this, and whatever she was perceiving stopped. Yeah. So I wonder about all of that is in there. I'm not saying that what you didn't see was real, but how much of that was caused by all the trauma that was going around you at home. Your mum's upset, your stepdad's upset, people are seemingly angry with you. Unfortunately, we can't control people. And I mean, some of the teachers were just bloody horrible back in the day. They had no right to be like that, but they could be very unkind to kids. And especially if they saw that. That's right. And if they saw kids were weak, I'm sure there was a lot of bullies amongst the teaching staff. Sorry, teachers, but there was back then. So all of those things combined, that is not to take away that I do absolutely believe there are entities that will and this is again only my understanding from reading over the years, that not everybody, when they pass to the spirit world, go to the light. They go where they are. Think about Saddam Hussein, for instance. I'm sure he didn't get a pair of wings and go to heaven. He would have found himself in a place.
Sudden change of conversation there, crikey. That's the last time I expect you to say that. Go for it.
Well, I mean,
I love it.
He would not have found himself in a place that was full of light. He would have found himself probably in a place with other people like him. He would probably be very angry. Now, if you've got an angry spirit, if good spirits can come into our world and make contact with us, why can't an angry one? So you've got a man or a spirit there's a little boy there. That little boy's frightened because he's in hospital. It's a frightening experience. I believe, yes, they can absolutely, I won't say attach themselves, but they can cause misery because that's what they did when they were here. Why would they change? They don't all become love and light. And unfortunately, they will direct it at the people that are the weakest, which are the children. And it's interesting you say it happened when you were a child, because the person I was talking about formerly, it happened to her when she was a child. And I remember her saying to me, everywhere I live, I'm haunted. There's a haunting. I says, it must be you. It's not that there's anything wrong with you, but I says, I believe you've got an ability and that you're perceiving things that perhaps normal people, i.e. people with no spiritual, perhaps another kid would not have had that experience. But I believe you have that ability, Kieran, and have always had that ability, that psychic ability to perceive the other dimensions. And of course, it's frightening for a child. So, when
it's
your
horrifying.
friend went in, yeah, and what your friend did when she went in there and had that battle was exactly what the granny I talked about did. She went in and she gave this spirit, this entity, a damn good telling of, get the hell out, what are you doing? You're not allowed to be here, and give them and I think you've always had that natural ability. And unfortunately, you perceive things that children shouldn't perceive. And it followed you. It followed you because you have to be strong with these things. You have to tell them they have no right to be here. This is not where they live. Get the hell away from me. And she did absolutely the right thing. She went in there and give it what it needed, which was a damn good kicking. I've heard of people say, I welcome these, the demons. Really? You must be mad.
Yeah, then they've never met one if that's the case.
Absolutely. I was just about to say that, Kieran. You've never met one. I thankfully have never, to my knowledge, met one. Met plenty in this life. But I can remember that even now, I'm 68 years old, and I can remember that black thing in the corner of my bedroom. And just before I finish, interestingly, I went through a divorce 30, 40 years ago, and the whole thing around my home changed because there was anger, there was sadness, there was, all those things. And I started experiencing things happening. And I had a dog then, Lucy. She was a border collie, and she used to sleep on the bed with me. And one night, I'm in bed and I was reading, and all of a sudden she started growling and her hair went up and the room went cold. Now, the only other person in the house was my son in the other room. And it was like, what's the matter, Lucy? And it was like I was filled with abject terror. And I ran out the room. She followed after me. And as she followed me, she was looking into this particular area. Did I produce this? Did we produce this because we were unhappy? I don't know. But I think it feeds off our negativity. And one more thing, I know of a couple who were on the verge of divorcing, and a very similar thing happened to them. And they asked me about it, and I says, what you were going through, all the angst, I mean, divorce is nasty. Maybe you produce that. Can you see where I'm going with that? I'm not saying that it's
Yes.
not real. I'm saying it's absolutely real.
All in any is true, technically, because everything seems to fall down to vibration. Vibration seems to be like one of the many consistent laws of the universe. So every particle in the room that you're sat in right now vibrates at different frequencies, which then establishes whether it's a solid, liquid, a gas, or whatever it might be. But as well as that, it seems to be emotions tend to affect vibrations around. And there seems to be different kinds of vibrations. There's the physical vibrations, but there also is like a psychic vibration that people emit. And then when people go through trauma, you're in that lower vibrational state. So as you mentioned, that particular leader, that I won't mention his name here anyway, because he would be quite a low vibration entity anyway, passing over, like, for whatever happens, that he's going through.
And the way he passed over, because he was...
It was quite brutal, wasn't it?
Absolutely. And I, myself, this is why I am so against things like capital punishment, because if you take somebody out of this world before their time, whether it's state-sanctioned murder, whatever, under the guise of execution, that person's going to be angry. They're still alive, or, okay, their physical body's gone. And these are the type of creatures, if you like, that would cause mischief. Now, it might be mischief to them, but to a little boy in a hospital bed, it's absolutely not mischief at all. It's a scary, scary thing. And it's very real and it's very scary. And I take it, that you witnessed that and you experienced that. I listened to the first part of this. I thought, wow, that's a hell of a lot for a little boy to go through. It's an awful lot for a little boy to go through.
But it seems like I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one. And the people that can perceive these kind of things, I think they're the people that have a natural psychic ability, because not everybody has that. And here you are all these years later, still following that path. And maybe it was, I won't say it was a part of it, but certainly I think you probably perceive things that perhaps other people wouldn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've sort of had to reluctantly accept that. It's taken many, many years. And like I said, it all boils down to vibration, because everything, I think this actual world itself is like a lower vibration anyway. So anything that may stay behind tends to be more often a lower vibration anyway. Once you reach that higher vibration, you begin to transcend to other adventures, I like to say. That's my best way of describing it, though. I don't believe in the concept of heaven. I believe it's something greater than just simply a heaven kind of place. It's more of an evolution of state and of consciousness.
No, that's exactly what I believe. I believe if you've been a mass murderer here, you're not going to go to a vibration where it's all love and light. I do believe you can evolve through that, but you're right about the vibrational levels. I had a near-death experience, and it was absolutely beautiful. And I was a child. I know it was real, and I didn't tell anybody about it for years because I thought it was me making it up or it was a dream. But it absolutely wasn't, and I know that now. And I went to a place where it was really lovely, but I was a child, and I hadn't done anything that, would put me on a... But I was very aware that I was moving through... when people say they go down a tunnel, you hear about this tunnel that people go down. I don't believe it's a tunnel as such. I believe it's because we're moving at such great speed when we come out of our bodies. It appears to be a tunnel. But I was aware that there were different levels, yeah? And now my understanding is they were different vibrational levels. I didn't end up in heaven, I hasten to add, somewhere, but it was very nice anyway. But yeah, and I think it's all, you're correct, it's all about vibration.
Yeah, there is a place that's kind of in between. It's like in that book they call The Blue Island. It's a great description of the Blue Island, really. It's almost like it's a waiting room between one space and another, like a liminal space ultimately, that we tend to tap into as mediums. And but after that experience, I mean, I kind of wonder, did that experience trigger something, an awareness of myself that proceeded through the rest of my life, really opened a door? Or did I have it before? Because I kind of questioned, really, because I'll have to share the photos that there are photos that I found in my mum's collection of me back in the 90s being like a chubby old kid. There's some photos of me out there in Sardinia with my family and just having fun. And a lot of the photos had this kind of white wispy smoke going around me. And when I was younger and I saw them, I just assumed it was cigarette smoke. But it looks so strange. It's so solid. It's almost like a liquid floating in the air around. So I'll have to maybe stick them up on screen with my mum's permission anyway. I'll show them literally the day before. It's either the day before or a couple of days before my accident. My mum took a photo of me in my school uniform because she was just getting me to try it on for the first time. And like, just one of those proud moments, she was really happy. Like, my son's going to school in a few days. Little did you know. But some photos were developed of that, and they have lightning strikes through them. And I thought it was a double exposure, and I've always assumed that. But the closer you look at them, you realize these aren't trees. These aren't. Because I did traditional photography back at college, so I know the photographic process and the anomalies you get through that. I love doing photography. I recommend anyone do that, even if you just have no skills now. Just take a photography course. It's so much fun. But yeah, doing that, I knew the anomalies you would normally get, so I could identify the issues. But as well as that, I'm a designer now, so I digitally reproduce, repair photos. I do all sorts of different things, so I could tell what's not quite right. With my experience looking back on those photos now, something's not right. Something's not good. And again, I'll add these. And it makes me think that, okay, did I have the ability before the accident? Or did I get it from the accident? Or maybe did I have it before and the accident accelerated something? There seemed to be a warning just before.
Because very often a something, if you talk to mediums, has been a catalyst, an accident, or something has happened that has spurned I believe you were probably always going to go down this route, but something needed to set it off. So it may have been that it was the accident that was the catalyst for you. Yeah.
But there's one thing I haven't told you, Christine, is talking to my mum. I forgot this thing happened, that my mum was best friends with this lady. Like, basically all of my family were really good friends with this beautiful Muslim family. They lived just down the road from us, who obviously had different beliefs and different interpretations. But the mum of the family was 100% a medium. She was connected, because a few days before the accident, obviously no one knew this was going to happen. Like, you wouldn't have a clue. No one's going to know. It's nobody's fault. She contacted my mum and said, I keep having a dream about Kieran. I was then called Kieran. And there's a man in a hat, a black shadow of a man, a black man, basically like a silhouette, stood at the side of a road watching. She said, I keep having this dream. I've had it about 3 or 4 times now for the last few nights. I just want to tell you that. She says, I know it's to do with little Kieran. And my mum kind of shrugged it off and just said, yeah, well, just could be the, she liked her alcohol, believe it or not, despite her religion. Could be that influencing it. She said, no, I just need to take heed of it. And yeah, so we had that kind of photographic thing happen a few days before. And then we had my friend warning us of something. They're saying I had this strange dream. And then obviously then it happened. And obviously my poor mum, experiencing that, she just think, okay, well, maybe I should have taken these warnings. Maybe I could have changed things. I say to my mum to this day, it's not your fault. Not your fault at all. But either way, I felt like even now, like, I almost hate to admit it. I get angry saying it though, but I get angry because, like, I feel like I don't want to trivialize anyone else out there who's experienced something tremendously traumatic, though. I don't want to say that's for a reason as well, because that's your judgment and your decision. So just speaking only about myself, I feel like it was meant to happen because it's afforded me this amazing number of things after. Like, now I share stories like this which help other people to understand their own lives and also to understand each other. Because there are so many people out there who once were talking to me essentially as atheists, and I still love atheists because I studied it for a little while, believe it or not. who have begun to be more open to the conversation, not converted, still atheists, but at least open to the conversation, who are now able to talk to other people who have experienced things like we have in a way where we're not just throwing judgment or doubt over it. We're just simply going, okay, we have two different points of view. We're still friends. It's okay to believe in two different things. And this is what this podcast is also about, really. It's about normalizing that conversation and saying that it's okay to have different experiences and different views about these quite tremendous things, and to say these are quite normal and natural things. So like I say, that whole thing could have been just a child's imagination trying to pull together this horrible thing that happens. But now there are so many things, so many different forms of evidence of things that have happened around that, whether it's this thing physically affecting the world around me, like I say, the people around me, but also the foreboding messages just before these interesting things. Like, it's one of the most weirdest experiences I'll ever have. And I feel like I need to tell the world about, these things. So I'd like to just take a moment to let you guys know that I've launched a book, my first book. Over the last few episodes of the Paranormal Perspectives podcast, I've had such fortune to meet some amazing people. And as ever, it's a reminder that the most amazing things happen to the most normal people. And the more we talk about these things, the more we can learn from each other, the more that we can expand our understanding of the universe. So this book essentially is a selection of ghost stories. These are experiences that I've experienced firsthand, some theories around them, maybe a bit of humour in there too. But the book isn't just simply about scaring people. It's really about opening people's minds, essentially, that, again, like I say, the most amazing things happen to the most normal people. So hope you don't mind taking a look if you have the time, and let me know what you think. I'll post a link in the comments. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the episode. So I received my upgrade through this whole experience. So I came out, my brain was working in a different way. I was able to create art, and I could do all sorts of different things. It's not quite acquired savant syndrome, but I just had a switch flipped on. And I find, I don't have any major disabilities. I find it quite hard to speak, which I've been trying to work on the last few years as well. I'm quite a tight jaw after the damage, though, and a number of other issues, though. But I don't let that stop me. It's just, I'm trying to share a message and show that normal people can talk about these things, and it's okay.
You're so right. You're not alone. There's so many people that have experienced something, and they probably put it right to the back of the mind as imagination or all the rest of it. I think you were destined to be sitting here making a podcast about these kind of experiences, because you don't know who's listening to this, and there may be somebody out there that'll go, that happened to me. And it may put to bed their fears, that they know that they're just not alone. And they're not alone, because if it happens to you, it's happened to other people.
Yeah. It's okay to be scared of these things, but it should be scary to talk about these things, because partly why I never spoke of these things was simply the fact that my religion, it wasn't real. So should I dare speak about it too much, I'll be, cast aside and such. And that was just the way it was then. But I'm hoping religions will evolve, because what amazes me is religions will worship a particular deity or a son of a deity, let's just say, and accept the supernatural things that they did from a book. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, there are people there in the room with you who've actually experienced quite incredible things, similar to things that happen there. And we're all over the world. And then you say to us, that person sat next to you, that's a load of rubbish. Or, hey, this guy in this book can walk on water and turn water into wine and so on. Like, both is fine. Both is fine, but one shouldn't override the other, because one is officially ordained and recognized. The other is ignored, but it's evidenced. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
And that's something, perhaps we can discuss at another or a later date, is look, if I did a comparative study of several religions, and I think Jesus was a medium, and I think he did all those things. And we won't go there because it's massive. We can't go there tonight, but it's been taken, and he's the only guy that could ever do that. But Mrs. Brown down the road, she's a witch or she's a mental case because she can
It's bizarre how it
talk to the
changes.
dead.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
So it's evil to speak to the dead, but the guy you've been worshipping has been dead for thousands of years. This is the doesn't make sense to me.
It's a weird old world we live in, Kieran. But what you've talked about, I think there's loads of stuff in there, and thank goodness you had somebody around you that would go in.
Oh yeah, I'm so lucky.
And fight the corner for you, because I think that's what it needs. Because probably you took a lot of, almost like perhaps the granny that I talked about. She became your defender. She was your knight in shining armor. She became my mentor in the end. Yeah, who went in there and said, get the hell away from him. And that's what you needed to hear. That it was, I think, it was justifying what was going on with you, and it was somebody taking charge and saying this isn't right, and you've got to stop doing this to this young man. And thank goodness you had that.
Yeah, I'm so lucky. So it could have got worse and worse and worse, because there was a point when this affected me so much that I no longer wanted to be around. Let's just say, I saw no light in the world or in people or in anything that I could do, and I kind of questioned, okay, if I was to, cross to the point of death, when I was younger, what was the point of me coming back to just suffer for years after? And then eventually it all began to make sense, why I'm still here doing what I do, really. So I suppose just to round things up, Christine, because I could talk about this for hours, really. I suppose I want to finish with a final question, if that's okay, Christine. For anyone that's watching out there, from a medium's perspective, anyway, so should anyone be experiencing anything like we've discussed today, basically, what would you recommend be, say, the first thing that they should do, really? What would be the best way of handling it?
First of all, I'd say talk to somebody you trust. And that could be anybody that you really trust. And if you haven't got anybody to hand, to trust, then I'm happy to listen. If somebody wants to, sort of contact or talk, and they haven't got anybody they can run it past, find somebody, even if it's your best friend or it's your mum, your dad, be prepared for people not to believe you. But if that's the case, and there are a lot of people that will say, oh, for goodness sake, that's rubbish, then contact us or contact yourself or myself and talk to us about it, because I'm very happy to talk to people about this kind of stuff, because people need to be listened to, and they need to know that they're being heard if it's happening to them, so that they don't sit and worry and think about, this is not a nice world to live in. It's a lovely world. Always protect yourself. Go and see a priest. Go and see a medium, but find somebody to talk to and air it. Put it out there.
Yeah, well, put your messages in the chat if you want. I'm happy to pass them on. But there's some great charities out there as well, aren't there? Because yes, we have I think mind.org, I believe it is a great charity. It just dealing with the psychological aspect of it as well. The Samaritans as well. If you're having a really hard time, pick up the phone. They'll answer you straight away. There'll always be someone there to help. Like I said, just never keep it to yourself, because for whatever explanation, whether it's so-called supernatural, psychological, it could be chemical, it could be all sorts of different things. The whole point is doing something about it. Don't live with it.
No, you have the power. So right. That's the best bit of advice. Don't live with it. Have it out there. Talk it out.
Yeah, don't live it because you're not living.
That's right. These things dwell in shadows. Don't, shine a light upon them. Do not allow them to live in the shadows. No.
Yeah, that's fine. And this will be the last I'll talk about this for a long time, because I don't want to give it my energy back in any way. So I believe we're on episode 10. I can't believe we've done 10 episodes already. So I'll have to do a little celebration video to end off this year. It's been an amazing year. And if anyone hasn't watched it yet, I released a cheesy new theme tune, which will feature on future episodes as well. I got into a very 80s mood and had fun and wrote a song. I don't know what happened. I had too much coffee that day, I think, but it was a bit of fun.
Cheese is good. We should have more fun in life.
Absolutely. So yeah, definitely more cheese on the way. It doesn't hurt to have fun. Never take yourself too seriously. But anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Yeah, thank you, Christine, for being here. It's always a pleasure talking to you. You do bring a lot of value to these conversations.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, Kieran.
Yeah. You have a lovely night. Give your cat a nice big hug.
I will do.
Giving a voice to those without a choice, sharing dreams and blowing off steam. We'll lend you a hand, we'll let you stand, sharing stories about the unknown. Paranormal perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers. A message of hope, birthed from the unknown. Who you gonna call? I'm not a ghostbuster. No proton packs, just crossing streams of knowledge. It's not so scary when things get hairy. It's not the paranormal, just future normal. Breaking barriers, no longer the carrier. Releasing the fear and replacing it with knowledge. Understanding each other, we uncover a whole new point of view within you. Paranormal perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers. A message of hope, birthed from the unknown. The only stream we need to cross is the platforms to get the message across. Knowing each other, sister to brother. No ghost or spirit or demon will ever get the better of this medium. Paranormal perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium, learning from each other, breaking barriers. A message of hope, birthed from the unknown.